Are we going to be big? All right. Hey, Dr. Klop.
Hello. Nice to meet you guys again, virtually.
It's good to see you.
All right, guys, we're just hanging out with Dr. Klop today. We're going to talk about just things to expect post FMT and just check in with him about how Theo's doing and the progress that we're seeing. So we're excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I haven't heard too many updates, so I look forward to seeing how things are from when you guys came mid-July. Is that correct?
Mid-July.
Mid-July.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. Just like even the day we're home, I have a video that like, it was the first week we were home. I was videoing him and he was eating a food that he hadn't eaten before. And then he dumped it out of the canister and was like, oh, Theo, let's put those away. Like not thinking that he would ever put it away, but he listened to me and turned and put every single thing back in the canister. And just little things like that are just huge. And he's been like, just what he's comprehending is expanding daily. Like his therapist, his teachers, like everyone's just like, oh my gosh, he's just taking in so much more. And not only that, but like his eyes are clear. He just is so much more aware too.
Yeah, I did a blog post this week on our website, purelivingfamily.com, and my nephew's football team played in honor of Theo for autism awareness. And it's a pretty significant week because Theo played catch with me for the first time ever. We caught that on video. It's on our YouTube channel as well, where he played catch with one of the dads at the football game, played catch with one of the kids from the football family. And then also Theo, we went to a wedding last week and Theo danced with me. Like, these are significant moments in Theo's life. And one thing that the football team asked me to do is present to the players and their family about Theo. What things do we need to know about autism? What things do we need to know about kids with special needs? And I just said, every kid is different, you know, and you have to celebrate every little thing. Every little thing is a victory. And last week was significant for us. Playing catch with my son, and then dancing with my son was incredible.
And we just feel like now that his body isn't dealing with all the inflammation that he was dealing with, constant pandas flares. Like it was flare after flare. Like 2019 was just 2019 into 2020, just that a whole year of just flare after flare. And his body never had a time to just relax and just catch up. And now post FMT, that's what we're seeing. We haven't seen a flare at all, like zero flares. And his body is just out of that inflammatory state.
Well, and his ABA therapist today he's matching up the 5 objects. So his progress with his teachers is just, the trajectory is so much faster, which is really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's beautiful to hear. And I love too that you guys are sharing more about autism and with the more general community for them to better understand it. And I think that point of each kid is just so unique is really a powerful one. And what I always share with parents, because you know sometimes a concern that sort of comes up when we think about doing FMT, right? You're taking someone else's microbiome and someone else's like material, right? And this is why donor screening and all of the things that we do to ensure it's a really high quality end product are there. But really what I try to tell parents is kids become not like the donor. They just become more of who they really were all along. But that was hidden or cloaked under their pain and inflammation and the symptoms that they were constantly fighting with. And so you're just seeing more of who your child truly was all along, not a different version of them that is influenced by someone else's microbiome. So it's just really cool to see that he's becoming free from who he was, struggling to be before.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting that you say that because I tell my friends that like Theo before pandas was a content, happy boy. Like, it wasn't a big deal to transition from place to place. It wasn't a big deal to do normal everyday things like putting on shoes, brushing teeth. But then once we started dealing with Panda's flares, everything was a big deal. And now he's back to his happy, content self, and life is so much better for all of us.
Yes, yes, and that's it's, as a for families who may be tuning in who haven't experienced that before, when you're sharing this, like those little moments of having that interaction with your child, you just take it for granted when you are not in that position. I know you guys have an older daughter, and so you just, when you have a child who's neurotypical and developing along all the regular milestones, like, what's the big deal, right? You don't really think about it. And just the other day too, we had a family who shared that for the first time, and I forget the exact age of their daughter, but she's 6 or 7, I think may have done FMT in the same time period that you guys did, or maybe one retreat later. And for the first time, when dad came back home, their daughter was like, hello, and like just excited to see him, right? And to me, it's like, it's not that they didn't care about them, but it was almost like they just didn't have the awareness of someone's presence or absence. And a lot of parents talk about that, it's like, they're just, it's almost as if they're in kind of their own world. And something about FMT helps wake them up from, the sort of world they're in, to being more present to the world around them, both their parents and their siblings, and even, showing interest in friends or other things. So just really cool to see that.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
So cool.
Well, we're obviously very excited about it, so we're anxious to know any advice you have to amplify this and to continue this progress long term.
Especially because I think everyone knows that we do a daily dose for 16 weeks post the loading dose that we went to Mexico for.
Right.
So now that we're gearing down to finish up with our 16-week period, what can we do to keep the ball rolling?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. So to sort of answer this, I think it's really important to highlight that, yes, you do continue the treatment over an extended period of time, right? So 16 weeks or 4 months is quite a long period of time. And the main reason for that is, when we start with the treatment in Mexico, we're doing what's called like a loading dose. So it's a big dose of a lot of bacteria to help rebalance the microbiome and to push out any other types of bacteria or other unwanted pathogens that are in the system. So that's sort of like a big dose. Here's what we want. And then the way that I think about the maintenance dose that we do every single day is, it's almost like a reminder to the microbiome, like, here's what you need to look like. Here's what you need to look like. It's like a daily reminder, kind of like when your kids, it's like, you got to clean your room. You got to clean your room. And eventually you're hoping that they get the point and they just clean it on their own. So that's what that daily dose is. And a part of having that over an extended period of time is to keep that reminder there, but also to support engraftment. And what engraftment means is it becomes just a part of their own microbiome. So unlike a probiotic that you need to take every day, and when you stop, stops having benefit, FMT is very different from that. It becomes a part of their new microbiome, and that's there. It's their microbiome now. It's not something that you need to keep giving on a daily basis. And so the next question is, well, how do we sustain that microbiome? And that's a question that anybody who has a healthy microbiome needs to keep in mind, right? Like, if you have something there that's healthy, how do we keep it being healthy? And when you're doing FMT, it's of course even more important, because it started down here, we've taken it up to here, but how do we keep that, difference in benefit in that same microbiome, and how do we build on it so these symptoms and that reduced and these great improvements that you're seeing continue to build? And so just as a reminder, when you stop FMT, it's not like the benefits will reduce or stop. In fact, they'll just keep coming months and hopefully years later. So then begs the question of, well, how do we maintain a healthy microbiome? And really, to have a healthy gut or a healthy gut function for anybody, you need to have both diversity, meaning like a lot of different types of bacteria, and an abundance. You seem to have a lot of different kinds and a lot of them. And really the best way to do that is to have diversity in your diet. And then avoiding as much as possible anything that could harm that diversity, right? And so making sure that you're not doing antibiotics for no good cause, or making sure that you're not always keeping everything totally clean. I mean, I kind of joke, but our initial microbiome came from nature. And so like, encourage your kids to get out and get dirty. And if you're able to get organic foods, they don't need to be washed all the time. If you're able to grow them yourself, like pull them out of the dirt. If it's, in good, clean soil, pull them out of the dirt, cut it up and eat it, So it's this concept of like keeping your microbiome sort of wilded, some people speak of it that way. I joke about hugging trees and, doing all these things, go to the beach and like roll in the sand and like swim in the lakes and the ocean. Like that's the microbiome. But beyond that,
Bush would say, breathe your biome.
Yes, breathe your biome. And then, beyond that, just as much diversity as you can. So I'm not sure where Theo was when you guys started, but a lot of kids, they come to us on a very restricted diet, between having a lot of food sensitivities or reactions to foods as one aspect to it, and the other aspect being just a lot of sensitivity to taste or textures or colors or these other types of things. And so as we begin FMT, a lot of those types of sensitivities to the foods, both from like a food sensitivity standpoint and the child's own sensitivity to taste and texture, begin to diminish, probably in part because we're reducing inflammation and we're reducing some of the OCD and fixation on different foods. And so as that diminishes, they're able to eat more foods. So that also is important. As when you start, we have some kids that are on 2, 3, 4, 5 different foods. Like that's it. That's all they're eating. And so it's important as well that 16 weeks gives us a lot of opportunity to feed that microbiome, because as they begin, having less reactions to foods, we can start to expand their diet. So that's really where the power of increasing the amount of different foods they're eating in a week. And as you guys well know, we encourage eating up to 50 different foods in a week. So that's something where we have parents who count it. We have some like total superstars who get their kids to eating 100 different foods in a week. That is a little more challenging, but definitely possible.
And then with counting.
Yeah. Well, you get there. And then of course there's other ways. So eating a lot of diversity in different foods, of course, is important. But then also, as you were mentioning, eating fermented foods. Fermented foods are such a powerful source of prebiotics. And in essence, prebiotics are like fuel to those gut bacteria. It's for the biotics. So it's a fuel source. So if you're not doing any prebiotics, you definitely want to start slowly. It's not like, here's a whole jar of sauerkraut or here's a whole bottle of kombucha. It might cause a bit of reaction, but definitely slowly building up on different types of fermented foods is very powerful, not only for kids with autism, but any child or any adult for that matter. And then something that I think is really important, and I know you guys have, got a wonderful product, the Pure Living Greens. I mean, it's got how many different fruits and veggies in it?
Oh, it's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head, but
it's about 15 or so. Along with some prebiotics in there. And so what we find is parents who can use different sources like that. You think about 50 different foods in a week. It's not about the volume of them, right? Like, it's not like to count a carrot, you need to eat 15 carrots. Like, right. A carrot is a carrot. I mean, obviously, if you can do more than like a little tiny nibble, it's better. But to get that diversity, it's very easy. If you're struggling to get more foods into the diet, you can easily do the Pure Living Greens as an example, where it's got, and maybe we could check later, but I think it's got between 10 to 15 different types of fruits and veggies. It's an organic source, as I know. And so it's a great way to get that diversity in, and you don't need a lot, right? I mean, even if you're doing a scoop a day, you're getting those 15 different foods, and it's easy to hide it into different, whether it's smoothies or into drinks, or some people, just like mix it in a milk and just syringe it in, and the different ways of getting it in. So,
he gets it syringed. He's usually in the shower, and we just give it to him through the shower door.
There you go.
He takes it. Like, I think parents, they just are like, oh no, my child will never do that. It's like, if you try it enough times, eventually they're like, oh, okay, And right. I think that's the thing with most foods and most supplements with our kids. Like,
we had a ton of anxiety with all the different meds that Theo was on and the supplements, and people were putting him in popsicles or in yogurt, and we just tried things. And when we did the syringe, he fought it the first couple of times, but then when you're just consistent, now he knows it's an everyday thing.
Right. Oh, that's great. I mean, it's kind of like any behavior you're trying to teach your child, right? Like in the beginning, they're not too excited about brushing their teeth.
Right.
But, once you fight through it enough times, they kind of resign to the fact that it's going to happen whether or not they like it. And, it works. So yeah, those are all great ways. And then maintaining that, right? So we got one angle of like trying to remove things that damage the gut microbiome. And then on the other angle, like how do we build it and sustain it? And so that comes through, clean eating of diverse, foods and building that microbiome from your surroundings, right? So those are, the two sort of approaches that I would take. And this isn't a question that you guys mentioned, but this is something that I get a lot of, is like, what do we do after FMT, right? So there's the 16 weeks and then what, right? So obviously you're stopping FMT at that point. And then the question is, well, what other treatment or what other things should I be doing? And one of the things that I like to remind people of, and I think you parents as a sort of group, if I can clump you all together, are really conditioned to always be seeking treatments and always be seeking like the next thing to do. And I totally understand that. Of course, you feel like you have like some limited amount of time to get everything that you want done. But what I really encourage parents to consider is observe where your child is at, right? Like see where they're at when you're completing or coming to the end of or already done, and really focus on supporting them in that way. And it doesn't necessarily always mean it's another treatment. It could be more therapy, or it could be, more exposure to social environments because maybe they're opening up now, right? So you're like looking for those opportunities. And it's just like when you see your child beginning to show interest in potty training, right? It's like, that's when you got to start. You don't want to wait until like that interest has passed and that, that prime opportunity, if you will, is upon you. So I think that's a big thing, right? So like now he's showing more interest in learning, or he's paying more attention and he's matching. So, that could be a real focus, right? Helping him develop in that way. For some kids, they may not have been able to like ride a bike or swing on a swing, or, they may have not had a lot of like motor control. And so it's a great opportunity to like push that, right? And get them doing more of those things, because doing the physical activities is also really important for helping to rewire the brain and get it working, sort of in synergy, between left and right. And there's the sort of motor side, which helps brain development. And then of course there's like the sort of cognitive side where they learn through, all the other things. So, and kids generally, learn through doing. So it's not to say that you shouldn't consider other treatments, but my number one priority by far is supporting the microbiome through expanding the diet and using whatever types of supplements that help in supporting that, and then reducing the amount of things that could hurt or damage it. So yeah.
That's such good advice. And it makes me feel less guilty, because I've been feeling like I have been like stagnant and I haven't been researching anything what to do next. And I'm like, I'm just trying to enjoy like the amazing progress we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I think that we need to state that we've finally had a moment to breathe after FMT, where before, you're right, we were always looking for new opportunities at the next treatment, the next protocol. What can we do we're in this race that you had mentioned, but this is the first time that me personally, that I felt like, take a breath, relax, your son's doing well, he's progressing, let him progress.
Right.
And it's just because he's not in pain, and that, that's the biggest part.
And well, I just love to hear that, and I it's just makes me so happy to hear that you can come to that sort of like sense of peace, or having a moment of pause. And I mean, seeing your child suffer is like one of the most painful things, right? I mean, it's like, I think I've heard from many parents, if I could just take on some of their pain, I totally would. But I think it's to sort of expand on that. The way that I think about sort of health and healing in general is that our bodies, we've developed over, evolved, if you will, over, depending on your belief structure, millions or thousands of years, but in any event, a very long time. And so far we're alive, and depending on where you are in the world, we're thriving okay. We're living a long time, and our life expectancy is continuing to get better. So I think a lot of what's gotten us into the mess that we're in right now is because we're over manipulating. We're trying to define how everything should be done, right? And most of, Western medicine, if you will, is just looking at symptoms, and it's like, how do I stop them? But symptoms aren't always a bad thing. They're helping to point us in some direction. And so I think it's really important that we stop trying to micromanage health, and more specifically the microbiome. I see this all the time where parents are like, oh, I've gotten this stool test, I need to treat this thing and that thing and that thing. And it's like, and they do it again, and it's like, oh, I need to get rid of that now, and I need to get rid of that. And it's like this never ending cycle of trying to just micromanage those very little things. And the truth is, we only know like 2% of what's really going on. And so to try to manage that by, just, I got to do this, and then I got to do that, and then I got to do that. Like, really, I think trusting in the body's like innate ability to heal and supporting it on its own journey through recovery. And that's not to say you shouldn't do treatment.
Right.
Definitely not the point, because there are a lot of therapies that will manage certain symptoms or will treat certain values on labs that have a lot of utility. But generally speaking, I think it's really important to move the focus away from, I need to like kill, to how do I rebuild? And that's what I mentioned too sometimes, with families, is it's easy to be in this cycle of years of antibiotics or antivirals or, different herbs or herbal combinations. But the whole point there is we're killing, right? We're getting rid of things, versus how do we rebuild and give the body what it really needs to thrive under the circumstances. So that's, I think, just a point that we can all learn from is let's try to do less micromanaging and more supporting. And when you do that, it's just relying on having this sort of belief that, the body through these thousands or millions of years of evolution, like it's kind of figured it out. And so how do we get closer to supporting that?
That's such a good point. Especially for like, those crazy autism moms that become fixated on certain things.
Are you
I don't know any of them, and I've never been one, so I don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and it's human nature, right? I mean, and lab companies and everyone else, I mean, they kind of like funnel you into that thinking. And when you don't have any other choices, well, then you're going to do that. But I think it's important, as you're going through this journey of FMT and you're coming to the end of it, that you don't necessarily jump to thinking like, okay, now what else am I going to do? Like, and thinking, because some people say, well, I'll do a test before I do FMT, and then I'll do a test after FMT. And that's great. I mean, I love that. But what's more important to me than a test result is, how is your child doing? Right? Like, which areas are they showing growth in, and how can we support that, versus, oh no, there's still this certain bacteria there, let's go fight it. Maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe that could cause more harm than good. And so I think as well, the healing course or the journey isn't always, and I've mentioned this a lot, it's not always a linear path, And so sometimes we're like, oh, I don't like the direction it's going, but that doesn't mean that it's the wrong direction. It could just be, it's like a detour on its way back up to a linear approach. And so it's important to sort of give it a boundary, but not just try to give it a one singular path, because what do we really know?
Right.
Yeah.
Such good advice.
Cool. Well, this has been great. We appreciate you
great.
taking the time. Like you mentioned, our Pure Living Greens, it's available on our website, purelivingfamily.com. Thank you for taking the time.
Sure.
Thank you for working with us and for helping Theo. We're so grateful for everything you're doing with this FMT procedure.
Wonderful. Well, it's always a pleasure to connect with you guys. I'm sure we'll do a part 3. And as well, for families that are interested, I know you guys share more, but we have the website fmtsolution.com, where you can learn a lot more as well. But really excited that you guys are creating that Pure Living line of product. I think it's very much needed out there, both for families that are dealing with special needs, but also for families who are not. I mean, there's just, although we've come a long ways, as I've talked about, our foods are becoming really nutrient depleted. And I think there are some supplements that are important to take, although generally I try to take people from doing, 50 to 60 different supplements in a day down to like 5 or 10. And I think you can do that when you've got a good, healthy, functioning gut microbiome. But yeah, very excited for you guys. And I hope you have a lot of success in supporting families to boost their nutrition.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you again.
Thanks, Dr. Klop.
You're quite welcome.